Hi and welcome, I'm AnewZ and you are watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. Donald Trump starts his Middle East tour with agreements signed in Saudi Arabia. Benjamin Netanyahu says the Israeli military will enter Gaza with full force. UN body rules Russia responsible for downing of flight MH17. Thank you for tuning in. US President Donald Trump has started his first foreign trip in Saudi Arabia, accompanied by a delegation of American business leaders. At the first stop of his planned Middle East tour, a number of agreements were signed, including the largest ever defense contract between Washington and Riyadh.
Saudi F-15 fighter jets escorted Air Force One as US President Donald Trump arrived in Riyadh on Tuesday, marking the start of his four-day tour of the Gulf region. Trump was welcomed at the airport by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and later honoured at an official ceremony at the royal court. Accompanied by a delegation of top American business leaders, Trump is visiting the Saudi capital for the Saudi-US Investment Forum before travelling to Qatar on Wednesday and the United Arab Emirates on Thursday. He is aiming to secure massive investment deals from Gulf oil producers. Saudi Arabia has already pledged $600 billion, but Trump has said he wants to bring home $1 trillion in commitments from the kingdom, a key US ally in the region. This visit to Saudi Arabia also marks a break from tradition. Trump has made it the first major foreign stop of his presidency, bypassing the usual early visits to the UK, Canada or Mexico. Notably, he has not scheduled a stop in Israel, prompting questions about the current status of the US-Israel relationship.
Donald Trump announced in Riyadh he will order the lifting of sanctions on Syria to give the country a, quote, chance at greatness. He called on Iran to make a deal or face maximum pressure and hailed $142 billion defense sales agreements made with the Saudis. For more, we go to our Ubay Shabander in Washington.
It is President Donald Trump's first overseas state visit, and he is in Saudi Arabia, meeting with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and signing a string of major deals with the kingdom. President Trump was personally greeted at the airport by the future King Salman after touching down in Riyadh. Air Force One was escorted through Saudi skies by 6 Saudi F-15 fighter jets. The president was met with a grand ceremony in the Saudi royal court. Trump praised Mohammed bin Salman for his leadership and vision in modernizing Saudi Arabia. And earlier in the day, Trump and Salman oversaw the signing of multiple deals between the two countries, covering artificial intelligence, energy, defense cooperation, and mutual economic development. Overall, $600 billion of Saudi investment commitments with the United States was announced. On the defense front, Saudi Arabia is one of the world's largest purchasers of U.S. arms, and discussions are ongoing on the potential purchase of the advanced American F-35 fighter jet. The White House has also announced that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia signed the largest defense sales agreement in history, nearly $142 billion, providing Saudi Arabia with state-of-the-art warfighting equipment and services from over a dozen U.S. defense firms. Major American tech companies like Google and Oracle have also committed to invest billions of dollars in cutting-edge transformative technologies in both countries. On the energy front, the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ministry of Energy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have concluded an agreement for cooperation in the field of energy. This agreement builds upon the existing relationship between the two ministries. It will focus on collaboration in examining the potential for innovation, development, financing, and deployment of energy infrastructure. And U.S. chipmaker NVIDIA will collaborate with Saudi company Humane to develop a 500 megawatt data center. critical infrastructure for advancing artificial intelligence capabilities for Saudi Arabia, which seeks to be a global hub in AI innovation. And next up for President Trump are formal state visits to see the Emir of Qatar on Wednesday and the royal families of the United Arab Emirates on Thursday. It is a Middle East tour that is expected to come with additional historic announcements by the president, who is widely viewed in the region as a leader who can bring peace and stability and usher in a new era of U.S. economic cooperation. Mubi Shabander for AnewZ in Washington, D.C.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that the Israeli military will enter Gaza with full force in the coming days, despite ongoing ceasefire efforts and the release of an American-Israeli hostage. In a statement released by his office, Netanyahu said the goal of the operation is to defeat and destroy Hamas. Netanyahu stressed that the war will not stop, adding that while a temporary ceasefire could happen, the military will go all the way until the mission is fully accomplished. Joining us from Tel Aviv to speak on Donald Trump's Gulf tour and the latest surrounding the war in Gaza is political analyst Tom Gross. Welcome, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with Trump's first foreign trip. Some big deals were signed in Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. delegation is set to visit Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. A notable missing stop here is Israel. What do you make of that?
Yes, that's right. In his previous presidency, he made an initial trip to the Middle East. Trump came to Israel and he gave a very warm speech at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. This time, it doesn't look so good for Israel. Not only is Israel watching from the outside, but there is a disconnect between Trump talking about peace treaties and reality. At the very moment Trump was talking about the deal that he concluded with the Houthis in Yemen, the Iranian proxy group in Yemen, the Houthis fired a ballistic missile over Saudi Arabia, close where Trump was speaking, from Yemen to Israel. Most of Israel had to run to bomb shelters. It was shot down, this missile, but the ballistic missile is a big thing. It can also be equipped to carry nuclear warheads, this kind of missile. And to be clear, it's an Iranian missile that the Iranians have given the Houthis. So there is a kind of apprehension in Israel that it's being a little bit sidelined. There's some other issues too. Trump, in his speech about an hour ago, announced that there would be that he would cancel the sanctions against Syria and give the new Syrian government a chance. Now, on the face of it, that's a good thing, but the government, the leader, al-Shara, grew out of al-Qaeda in the past, and it's not yet clear that the Syrian army and the Syrian forces are moderate. You still have a lot of Islamist foreign fighters and so on. So, and even worse, from Israel's point of view, is tomorrow Trump heads to Qatar. He spoke about Qatar as if it's some kind of moderate, helpful Western ally, but it really is not. It's, a backer of Hamas, it's close with the Taliban, it's backed ISIS in the past. And Israel has to be concerned that Trump is choosing to honor Qatar with a visit, but not America's long-standing ally, Israel.
You spoke briefly on the Houthis. The U.S. has reached a ceasefire that does not include Israel. Washington has directly engaged with Hamas. Now they are negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran. How has this been perceived in Israel?
Well, on all three issues, there is some profound apprehension because, as I just pointed out, the Houthis are still firing ballistic missiles at Israel, and America, without consulting Israel, Trump declared a kind of unilateral truce with the Houthis, leaving Israel to fend against the Houthis for themselves. I might add that Trump also didn't inform Britain that had been involved with the fight against the Houthis, another close ally of the United States. Vis-a-vis Iran, Trump said some very strong words against the Islamic regime in Iran. But words are not what Israel wants. Israel wants to know that the United States and others really will make sure that Iran does not acquire nuclear weapons. And what Israel is worried about is that Trump will sign a deal with the Iranians and he will proclaim it as a peace deal to stop nuclear weapons, but in fact, it won't be much different than the deal that President Obama signed with the Iranians, which the Iranians just used as a cover to continue their nuclear weapons program.
Two U.S. special envoys headed to Doha to try and mediate some sort of an agreement and a pause in the Gaza war, given that Netanyahu announced that IDF will enter Gaza with full force in the coming days. Would you say that there is any room for a deal to be made right now?
Definitely, and just to be clear, Israel has offered Hamas a ceasefire that would last about 50 days, and Hamas would release 10 living hostages. And Hamas have been turning this down because Hamas wants an end to the war that will leave Hamas in control. And by the way, Donald Trump also said he wants an end to the war, and everybody wants an end to the war, but it will not produce a better outcome in the medium term or even a little bit down the road, not for Israelis and not for Palestinians in Gaza, to leave the Hamas terror group in control. Hamas also terrorizes the population, the civilian population of Gaza. It will be better if Hamas disarms and a government, a Palestinian-run government, takes control in Gaza, a government that will want to live in peace with Israel. Hamas does not want to live in peace with Israel, and therefore to stop the war prematurely, it might seem like peace, but actually it's just a recipe for a bigger conflict a little bit down the line.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights and opinions.
You're welcome.
Germany said there can be no peace talks without a ceasefire in Ukraine, following a meeting of European foreign ministers in London. The diplomats spoke on securing strong support for Kiev.
A truce is the first condition for any negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. That's according to the German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul. He made the comment in London on Monday as European foreign ministers met to discuss strong support for Ukraine. He says that Kiev is ready for peace talks, but the next move must come from Moscow.
This is a crucial week in which we can take a step forward towards peace negotiations. In our view, the prerequisite for this is that there must first be a ceasefire. This has been clearly articulated. Ukraine is ready for this. President Zelensky has taken a big step forward, and the expectation of President Putin and Russia is that they will now follow suit.
Wadephul also stressed that Germany, along with its European allies, expects Russia to demonstrate a clear desire to end the fighting.
Germany now expects a ceasefire from Russia and then a willingness to negotiate. I am quite sure the European position is clear. It will make it clear that we can have momentum, that Europe can finally return to a situation where peace can prevail.
Foreign ministers from the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Poland and Spain met under the Weimar Plus format in UK's capital and issued a joint statement pledging stronger support for Ukraine, saying, "We discussed how we would further step up European efforts to support Ukraine in its ongoing defence against Russia's war of aggression." The group added that Ukraine should remain confident in resisting Russian attacks with continued European backing. The Kremlin insists President Vladimir Putin is serious about peace talks. On Sunday, Putin proposed direct talks with Ukraine aimed at ending the war, and after US President Donald Trump publicly told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to accept, Zelensky said he would, but that Putin should attend the meeting in Istanbul on Thursday in person. Putin and Zelensky last met in December 2019. European leaders visited Kiev at the weekend and have called for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire.
Ursula von der Leyen faces the most defining test of her presidency of the European Commission this week as the EU's General Court announces its ruling on the case of messages she exchanged with Pfizer CEO during negotiations for a contract to supply vaccines against COVID-19. In the case, known as Fizergate, the court will decide whether the Commission violated transparency principles by refusing to make public the contents of the emails.
The European Commission is facing a critical moment as the EU Court of Justice prepares to rule on a high-profile transparency case involving its president, Ursula von der Leyen, and Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla. The case centres on the Commission's decision not to disclose text messages exchanged during the negotiation of a multi-billion euro vaccine contract in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. The legal dispute, often referred to as Fizergate, began when the New York Times and its former Brussels bureau chief filed a lawsuit challenging the Commission's refusal to release the messages. The case has raised broader questions about transparency and accountability in the EU, with some critics arguing that such communications should be treated as official documents. The messages in question reportedly emerged from a 2021 interview in which Bourla described his exchanges with von der Leyen as fostering deep trust and facilitating the agreement for the EU to purchase up to 1.8 billion doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. This was the largest single vaccine deal struck by the bloc during the pandemic, involving an initial order of 900 million doses with an option for an additional 900 million. Adding to the pressure, the European Ombudsman concluded in 2022 that the Commission's failure to search for the texts constituted maladministration, calling it a wake-up call for EU institutions. The Commission, however, maintains that transparency remains a top priority and has denied that the messages were part of formal negotiations. Observers say the outcome of this case could set a significant precedent for how the EU manages transparency in high-stakes negotiations. A ruling against the Commission could fuel ongoing calls for stronger oversight and potentially reshape the standards for communication within the bloc. The decision is expected to be closely watched as von der Leyen navigates her second term, just months after publicly committing to higher standards of openness and accountability.
In his first speech since the ceasefire with Pakistan was announced, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi stated that military action is only paused and could resume if another terror attack happens. The statement has drawn sharp criticism from Pakistani lawmakers, with Islamabad calling it provocative and irresponsible. Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistan's defense minister has strongly criticized Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi following his first public remarks after a US-brokered ceasefire between the two South Asian rivals last week. In a statement, the Pakistani minister accused Modi of promoting terrorism globally, specifically citing alleged Indian involvement in targeting Sikh activists abroad, including in Canada. He went as far as labeling the Indian Prime Minister a certified terrorist who foments instability beyond India's borders. Prime Minister Modi's comments came in the wake of Indian military strikes last week on what New Delhi claimed were terrorist camps across the border. Citing the Indus Treaty's suspension, Prime Minister Modi said terror and talks cannot go together, terror and trade cannot go together, and water and blood cannot flow together, a comment that has angered Islamabad. Pakistan, however, denies the presence of militant infrastructure in the targeted areas and insists that Indian strikes hit civilian locations. The two countries had already strained ties, and the recent escalation threatened to spiral out of control until the United States intervened to broker a ceasefire. Following the ceasefire, both countries' Director Generals of Military Operations agreed on Monday to halt any crossfire and scale down forces at the line of control. Pakistan's foreign minister has confirmed a second round of military and diplomatic talks is expected within 48 hours. While Islamabad has welcomed US mediation, India has so far refrained from acknowledging any third-party involvement. Experts argue that third-party intervention is critical in the absence of a formal bilateral escalation control mechanism between the two countries. Pakistan has outlined three key issues it insists must be addressed in any future dialogue: terrorism, the Indus Water Treaty, and the status of disputed territory of Kashmir. With both nations maintaining hardened positions, analysts stress the importance of continued international mediation to prevent further conflict between the two nuclear-armed states. Hera Mustafa for AnewZ, Islamabad.
Tensions remain high as India and Pakistan continue to exchange threats despite the recent ceasefire. However, the news of a truce was met with cautious optimism on the streets of Islamabad.
Amid a backdrop of mutual threats and recent cross-border clashes, residents of Islamabad are expressing guarded optimism following the ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan. While the situation remains volatile, many describe the talks as crucial, a rare but necessary opening for diplomacy between the nuclear-armed neighbours. The ceasefire in the Himalayan region was announced by US President Donald Trump on Saturday, following 4 days of fighting and urgent diplomacy led by Washington. Speaking at the White House on Monday, Trump said trade pressure played a major role in halting the conflict and bringing both countries to the negotiation table.
India has consistently used tactics to pressure Pakistan, much like the incident in Pahalgam. This ongoing blackmail is harmful. The current situation is not a positive development. Key issues between Pakistan and India should be resolved through negotiations. In just a few days, we witnessed both countries suffer major losses. It is crucial that they come to the negotiation table and work toward resolving the remaining issues.
Many in the Pakistani capital expressed relief, but also regret that talks had not taken place sooner.
Negotiations have finally taken place, but the ceasefire they signed has already resulted in loss of life and significant suffering. If they had agreed to sit down and negotiate earlier, this issue could have been resolved much sooner.
Though the ceasefire offers a moment of calm, there is still a degree of uncertainty about the future.
China has pledged nearly $10 billion in yuan-denominated credit to Latin American and Caribbean nations. At a forum hosting the leaders of those countries in Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping said the funding would support development. Xi warned that no one wins in tariff or trade wars. The forum is seen as a direct challenge to long-standing U.S. economic and political influence in the region.
There are no winners in tariff wars and trade wars. Bullying and tyranny will only isolate oneself. China and Latin American and Caribbean countries are important members of the global South. Independence and self-reliance are our glorious traditions. Development and revitalization are our natural rights. Fairness and justice are our common pursuits.
Washington has lowered tariffs on low-value imports under $800 from China from 120 to 54%. The move follows trade talks in Geneva that saw Beijing and Washington slash tariffs on each other's goods by 115% for 90 days. In financial markets, the dollar fell and U.S. stock futures rose after April inflation came in lower than expected. The International Civil Aviation Organization has ruled that Russia is responsible for the 2014 downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 that killed all 298 passengers and crew. The UN body said Russia failed to meet its obligations under the Chicago Convention, which prohibits using weapons against civilian aircraft. The ruling followed a case by Australia and the Netherlands over the shooting down of the MH17 flight over eastern Ukraine. On the ruling and its potential impact on the global aviation community's readiness to confront politically sensitive incidents, we earlier spoke to aviation legal expert Andrei Guk. Here's what he had to say.
Actually, it's not the first move by ICAO against Russia Federation, because back in 2022, ICAO already imposed red flag to Russia and only few states in the world has the status of the state that is not capable to provide air safety for civil aircraft. It's like Congo, and actually that's it. Besides, Russia was dropped off from the Council of ICAO also in 2023 and was not re-elected to this Council of ICAO. And now yesterday, ICAO Council first time in history, provided a decision on merits of the dispute and recognized that Russia violated Article 3 bis that forbids any use of weapon against civil aircraft on the flight. So it's like unprecedented decision, and in fact and in law, Russia is deemed to be violated the Chicago Convention. What are the consequences? Of course, Russia is denying even this decision and denying the ICAO Council ruling, but now we can say that eventually all states that are involved in international civil aviation knows what happened, and Russia is responsible despite all the rejection. And eventually, probably when it will be some changes in Russia, but this decision still will be enforced, and Russia will have to pay compensations to those states involved, in particular Netherlands and Australia, and to victims, relatives of the victims. So eventually we can expect that the variety of different international decisions, Hague Court decision, ICAO Council and International Court of Justice, and numerous sanctions of all the states all over the world will eventually result in responsibility that Russia will have to bear and have to pay.
A conference titled National Identity, Resistance and Sovereignty Perspectives for Corsica was held in Rome, jointly organized by the Baku Initiative Group and the Corsican Pro-Independence Nazione movement. Our Anita Sharma has the details.
Hi everyone, we are in Rome, Italy for a conference about Corsica, its national identity, sovereignty, and also a discussion with respect to the resistance movement. There's also a broader discussion taking place about France and its policies and how they have basically impacted former colonies and why that needs to be stamped out now. Key dignitaries spoke to us from this event. From BIG, we have the executive director, Abbas Abbasov, who essentially says BIG's work with Corsica, the Corsican movement, is incredibly important to help both parties move forward.
Our mission is supporting fair struggle against colonial policies under the international law. And as I mentioned before, today's conference is our 26th international events dedicated to the conservation matters. Also, from last year, we started our activity as a think tank, and we published more than 10 reports, more than 2 books for last 1 year. And some of these reports were submitted to United Nations Human Rights Committee and Human Rights Council.
We also had an opportunity to speak with Azerbaijani MP Tural Ganjali, who says all of this is very dear to his heart. Now, both parties, the Nazione movement on the Corsica side as well as BIG, signed a memorandum of understanding, and the member of parliament tells us this is very, very critical.
So the document that was signed between Corsican people and the Baku Initiative Group is very significant, very historic. I think that with this way we are going to support Corsican people with their struggle for independence, because the only way that Corsican people can speak, can bring this issue into attention of the international community is through these documents, is through this document of understanding, memorandum of understanding. So we have to understand their plight, their situation, their human rights, what we can help, how we can help the Corsican people, because even they cannot allowed to speak their native language in their schools in Corsican island. So this is very important to help them.
And finally, we had an opportunity to speak with the spokesperson of the Nazioni movement, and he said he cannot wait any longer. His people are frustrated, and they really want to see a big step forward with respect to their plans to be sovereign.
Today we rely on our Azerbaijani friends to internationalise our struggle, to have Corsica included among the territories to be decolonised, since we have been colonised by the French state, and this has had terrible repercussions on our identity, our language, and our economy. And today we are in serious danger of disappearing. Therefore, we rely on the help of our friends to internationalise the issue and to finally have the right to decide our own destiny.
A lot of key discussions taking place here at the conference concerning Corsica, and like I said, a broader discussion about France. For AnewZ, I'm Anita Sharma. We'll send it back to you.
The 18th Caspian Agro and the 30th Interfood Azerbaijan exhibitions kicked off at the Baku Expo Center, bringing together regional and international players in agriculture and food industries.
Azerbaijan's agriculture and food industry come together as the 18th Caspian Agro and 30 Interfood Azerbaijan exhibitions get underway. The event is considered the region's largest platform for innovation and partnership.
The exhibitions not only boost regional, but also global cooperation in the fields of agriculture and food. This year, 450 companies from more than 30 countries are participating. The event spans all pavilions and open areas of the Baku Expo Center.
This type of exhibitions, this type of conferences makes the relations even closer between two countries, makes even deeper between the businesses, which helps at the end to make and boost trade between Georgia and Azerbaijan, and once again makes stronger relationships that our countries, friendship relationship that our countries has.
Both exhibitions have already become national brands for Azerbaijan.
This year, the focus is on digitalization, smart technologies, and sustainable solutions in agriculture. In the food industry, organic products and functional foods take center stage.
I think Azerbaijan is going well for agriculture sector, and they are improving their systems, technologies, until they are now going to use IE systems, technology. So it is improving. It is a great nation with great people working hard.
I think this exhibition, there is two purposes. The one is, of course, the exchange information between the politicians and the professionals from different countries, but it's very important also for the people of Azerbaijan and for the farmers to come and to see some new technologies, new opportunities, let's say in IT field and etc. You know, but for the also companies which are trading food and food products, it's very important to come here and to see what Azerbaijan is producing. It's the same like Azerbaijan companies can come to Riga food and see what we are producing in Latvia.
The panel, The World After Baku COP29, Achievements, Perspectives and Opportunities in Climate Change, held as part of the Caspian Agro and Interfood Azerbaijan exhibitions, highlighted the issue of climate change. Participants emphasized the significance of Baku hosting COP29 and discussed climate-resilient approaches in agriculture and the adoption of green technologies. The session underscored the sector's capacity to respond to climate challenges and the emerging opportunities.
I think it's everybody's goal. As to COP30, we will have some innovative proposals about forests, preservation of forests, and we'll have a lot of other items as well as a nation, as Brazil. And as COP presidency, we'll probably report on the new contributions, the voluntary contributions, and also on how our partnership is going for the $1.3 trillion mark.
The exhibition hosts representatives from a wide range of countries, including Germany, Belgium, Canada, China, Egypt, Israel, Italy, Russia, and the United States, as well as regional nations such as Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, and Uzbekistan. Notably, Egypt is taking part with a national pavilion for the first time this year.
Azerbaijan and Turkey continue to strengthen their strategic partnership with high-level meetings in Baku. As regional security and defense cooperation deepen, both countries reaffirm their united stance and close political ties.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev received Turkey's Defense Minister Yaşar Güler in Baku, congratulating Turkey on the dissolution of the PKK. The head of state called it a historic development, crediting President Erdogan's leadership, the Turkish military's professionalism, and national unity. The Azerbaijani leader said the outcome contributes to regional peace. Minister Güler conveyed Erdogan's greetings and thanked Aliyev, noting that Turkey had ended its 41-year fight against terrorism. He also praised Azerbaijan's strong stance against Armenian militants. Both sides emphasized the growing military partnership and expressed confidence in the continued development of Azerbaijani-Turkish ties. President Aliyev also received Okay Memiş, Turkey's new Secretary General of the National Security Council. He welcomed Memiş's choice of Azerbaijan for his first official visit and expressed hope for its success. Both sides praised the deepening of allied ties and emphasized the strong personal relationship between President Aliyev and Erdogan as a key driver of cooperation. The meeting also highlighted successful collaboration in security and other strategic areas.
Baku is hosting the inaugural Europe and Commonwealth of Independent States Postal Leaders Forum. The event is set to feature discussions on the future of the postal sector.
In Baku, where the innovation meets collaboration, postal leaders from across Europe and the Commonwealth independent states are redefining the future of delivery. The inaugural Postal Leaders Forum, organized by the Universal Postal Union in partnership with Azerbaijan Ministry of Digital Development and Transport and Azerpost, brings together over 150 participants from more than 30 countries.
This landmark event marks a pivotal moment for regional postal development, focusing on transformation, digitalization, and cooperation across borders. As the host nation, Azerbaijan is showcasing the strides it has made in modernizing its postal network.
Under the theme Next Horizons, E-commerce, Innovation and Supply Chain Navigation for Future Excellence, the forum delves into strategic planning for the UPU Strategy 2026-2029, explores advancement in digital infrastructure and fosters regional cooperation to enhance service delivery. With a focus on capacity building, the event offers training on electronic advanced data, customs declaration and transport logistics, aiming to streamline processes and reduce bottlenecks in international deliveries.
With Azerpost at the forefront, the country is aligning its infrastructure with global standards and advancing its digital transformation.
Azerpost prioritizes both the country's development of its technological infrastructure and enhancement of service quality. Since 1998, it has been an active member of the UPU Express Mail Service cooperative and successfully utilizes the products of the UPU Postal Technology Center. Efficiently implements various tracking and money transfer systems. Azerpost approved a new development strategy in 2021 and launched a transformation based on 3 key directions: fixing the basics, optimization of the postal network, digitalization of processes.
According to Isi Mustafayev, acting chairman of Azerpost, this is the second international event the Universal Postal Union has held in Azerbaijan this year, another milestone in promoting the country's role in global postal development.
The first international event was held in January. Nearly 150 participants from various countries are attending today's forum. Among them are postal sector regulators, ministry-level representatives, and heads of national postal operators. The main significance of the forum is the opportunity it creates to promote Azerbaijan and strengthen its image on the international stage. Azerbaijan has officially submitted its candidacy for the upcoming UPU elections in Dubai, a move aimed at expanding its influence within global postal governance.
There is no magic tools or magic services for the future. What we would like to stress is the fact that governments and societies needs to support designated operators, because without the help of government, without the active role of the government, Post will not survive, because the letter mail has disappeared almost completely. But there is a big opportunity, a great chance for operators in the e-commerce service, but e-commerce not only as a delivery, but also e-commerce as a export activity, which brings additional value to the GDP of the particular country.
We do this in many ways. We do technical assistance in terms of providing equipment. We do capacity building, and also what we are doing here right now is also very high-level capacity building, really trying to get the leaders of the posts to share information, and then we'll be able to gauge the gaps, operational gaps that they have, and from there we'll be able now to put together assistance that can be able to bridge those gaps.
As global e-commerce accelerates, the Postal Leaders Forum in Baku reinforces a shared commitment to build smarter, more sustainable, and more connected postal systems fit for the future.
Georgia's parliamentary speaker Shalva Papuashvili said that his country remains committed to pursuing EU membership. However, at a conference in Budapest, he criticized the EU's views on reforms in Georgia. Our Nini Nikolaishvili brings more from Tbilisi.
In Budapest, Georgian Parliament Speaker Shalva Papuashvili delivered a direct rebuke to the European Union, accusing it of interfering in Georgia's internal affairs and undermining democratic principles. Speaking at the conference of the speakers of parliaments of the EU member and partner countries, Papuashvili criticized EU's demands for a foreign-led vetting system for Georgian judges. He called this the violation of national sovereignty and claimed that no EU country would accept such external control over its judiciary. In his words, the centralized EU structure sometimes imposes terms that it would not accept itself. Papuashvili went further, accusing certain EU political groups of helping former President Mikhail Saakashvili and its allies to return to power, an effort that Papuashvili calls the blatant interference. The speaker also condemned the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, whose resolution in January led the Georgian parliament members to withdraw from the assembly. He said that this move shows the disrespect to people's democratic choice and confirmed the pattern of political pressure under the guise of European values. Papuashvili's central message is that Georgia remains committed to the European integration, but on its own sovereign terms, not with dictated ones. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Armenia's alcohol producers and exporters protested outside Georgia's embassy in Yerevan over alleged delays at the border caused by mandatory lab tests on the Georgian side. Protesters claim dozens of trucks bound for Russia have been stuck for weeks, causing millions in losses for producers, exporters, and transport companies. They demanded urgent action to restore trade flow. Railway officials from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan met this week to discuss ways to expand cargo transportation along the China-Central Asia route that has already seen a major increase since the start of the year. Fariza Kalimurzina has more.
In the first 4 months of 2025, container shipments from China to Central Asia saw a dramatic 104% increase. That's according to Kazakhstan's national railway company. This surge is largely due to stronger trade ties with China and improvements in logistics infrastructure. A key player in all of this is the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, which is becoming a major corridor connecting East and West. Last year alone, more than 11 million tons of cargo traveled by rail between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Right now, around 26 trains cross that border every day. 2024 was a record year for the Trans-Caspian route, with shipments hitting 4.5 million tons, a 20% increase from the previous year. Container traffic has surged nearly threefold, with over 56,000 containers transported. Experts say Chinese companies are driving much of this growth, with the number of container trains from China increasing nearly 35 times. Looking ahead this year, it's expected that 5.2 million tons of cargo will be moved through the road, much of it along the middle corridor. There is also a growing interest in the project from Europe, with Hungary and Serbia stepping up, offering their facilities and logistics support. Meanwhile, China is making major investments in this initiative. Authorities in Shaanxi province are set to invest more than $340 million to boost container transport along the China-Europe road, which will significantly accelerate transit through Central Asia. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ.
The Secretary General of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization said at a forum in Istanbul that the region's importance to intercontinental ties is increasing and that Turkey is at the center of the Black Sea zone's energy and transport corridors.
The Black Sea region is becoming more strategic in global trade and energy connectivity. Ambassador Lazar Comănescu, Secretary General of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, says the Middle Corridor is gaining momentum and Turkey plays an active leading role in this process.
Many initiatives which we have been developing within the organization, like the Black Sea Ring Highway or the motorways of the sea, or cooperation in the area of energy and so on. Turkey has had a lot of initiatives in this respect, and just to come closer to our times, you may wish to know, and I am particularly glad that under the Turkish chairmanship in office of this organization, in December 2023, we have been able to adopt a new strategy, a new basic economic agenda, which is setting up our priorities and lines of action for the next decade. And that speaks by itself about what the role of Turkey has been, and I'm absolutely convinced that Turkey would continue to have a most valuable contribution to the promotion of the objectives of the Black Sea Economic Organization.
Comănescu emphasized the rising interdependence between nations and the region's growing importance as a transit hub connecting Europe with Asia and the Middle East.
The Asian region, Asia and Pacific, are becoming the real engines of the global economy, and that means for that we need connectivity, and you cannot speak about connectivity between Europe and Asia without the Black Sea. This is why we in the Black Sea have been promoting several initiatives aimed at highlighting and asserting more the role of the organization in this respect.
The BCEC also supports new energy projects. From clean energy transfer to gas exploration, regional cooperation is expanding.
As you know, there have been other initiatives like the so-called green cable transport of energy, clean energy from Azerbaijan through Georgia, Black Sea, Romania, and Hungary. In between, there are negotiations and talks among Turkey and other other countries in the region, like Romania, for example, and Bulgaria, looking into how to explore and exploit energy resources in the Black Sea, like gas and so on.
With 13 member countries and a combined population of 350 million, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization sees the region as a global hub, both as a market and a gateway. From energy corridors to transport highways, the Black Sea continues to shape the future of regional integration. And as Ambassador Commonwealth underlines, Turkey is right at the center of this transformation.
Asian Development Bank officials visited Afghanistan to explore financing the country's fight against climate change and environmental protection. Our Tamim Bahiz brings more from Kabul.
In a key meeting aimed at strengthening environmental cooperation, the Director General of Afghanistan's National Environmental Protection Agency, Mauli Matiul Haq Khalis, met with officials from the Asian Development Bank at its office in Kabul. Mr. Khalis praised the Asian Development Bank's ongoing efforts and initiatives in Afghanistan, expressing gratitude for their support on critical environmental issues. The meeting focused on a range of topics including climate change, environmental protection, and sustainable development. The head of the ADB's Agriculture and Natural Resources Division provided detailed insights into the bank's current projects and reaffirmed that climate change adaptation and mitigation are among their top priorities. Both sides held comprehensive talks on how to address the growing impacts of climate change in Afghanistan. They explored strategies for adaptation and resilience, enhancing collaboration between NEPA and the ADB, and designing projects that adhere to environmental standards. It was agreed that technical teams from both organizations will hold regular joint meetings to deepen cooperation and ensure tangible results are in their shared environmental goals. As Afghanistan faces increasing environmental challenges, such partnerships are seen as crucial steps towards a more sustainable and climate resilient future. This is Tamim Bahiz in Kabul for AnewZ.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and do stay tuned to AnewZ.